In today's show, we talk Rob Williams' potential trade market and what a deal would look like and say about the Portland Trail Blazers. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine, make it your first listen, and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, let's talk a little about Rob Williams' trade value, the trade market for Rob Williams, why it might be a little bit easier to trade Rob than some other players on the team, as discussed earlier this week, and what the Blazers might be after in a Rob Williams deal, even if it's not what you're after as well. Plus, front office rankings. The Athletic released some rankings. Nate Duncan and John Hollinger have some organizational rankings, and spoiler alert, Blazers not at the top. We'll talk about those, and I promise that rankings aren't just rage bait. I have some real thoughts about them in the third segment. Let's start with Rob Williams. Earlier this week, shout out to my everydayers. If you listen to the program every day, and I hope you do, and you can, because it's coming at you 5 days a week. Spend a little bit of time in your morning taking a nice walk in the cold rain of Portland, Oregon, and spend 30 minutes, or if you like to listen to it a little faster, shout out to you, Lucas, you can listen to it a little faster and really get it done in about 17. But if you listen to the shows earlier this week, you know that I talked about the sort of challenges in trading the big money veterans for the Trailblazers. The Anthony Simonses, the Jeremy Grants, DeAndre Ayton, guys making north of $25 million. Those are hard to trade in the current NBA climate. Not impossible, but if you combine like sort of, underperforming, lack of interest in general with large salary, with the new CBA ecosystem, yes, it's hard to trade. But I mentioned in that show that like when you talk, when you just like walk through it, like the players most likely to be traded, and I included Rob Williams in that sort of list, but I said that like we're not really talking about him in that show. Today we're really going to talk about him because I think Rob's market is just way easier because of his salary and because of his talent, right? Like he's not wildly talented than the other three gentlemen I just mentioned, but he is paid half as much money, and the sort of confluence where that graph meets is it's just different. It's just a different intersection, and it's a different market, and it's a different appeal. This has been spurred by a couple question askers in my email. The best way to always reach me is lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. I look at the social media websites probably daily, but not more than that. But I'm like, the way to reach me is the email address at gmail.com. lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. I got a couple questions like this over the last month, maybe, since the season started, and I have discussed the sort of what the Blazers are weighing when they want to trade Rob Williams, and I'll mention that briefly here again, but that's not really what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about actually like the mechanisms that make Rob Will tradable. First and foremost, he's just pretty good when he plays. He's in the concussion protocol. It's unclear whether he'll be available again on Friday. Concussions are so scary. Brain stuff's so scary. So it's like it's hard to know what Rob's situation is or when he might be available to come back. It can take time. Chauncey Billups said he was on the court doing stuff, but certainly not a full participant. So hard to know what his status will be. And as I'm recording this on Wednesday evening, we have not had an update. I think technically the Blazers don't even have to give us an injury update until Thursday at about 5 p.m. Portland time. So no reason that they would have an official update for us yet. And the reporting suggests right now that we don't know if he'll play. But when Rob has played, he's effective. He's a good defensive player with some a little bit of defensive versatility, can switch a little bit, but really it's just like a smart, good positional defender that protects the rim. He's a good passer. He's a good screen setter. He's really limited with his own individual offense, but he does enough to open up the offense for others that he can be a value on that side of the ball as well. He's just a good basketball player. I think he's the Blazers' best big man. He was a big part of the finals run for the Celtics in 2022. He obviously wasn't the engine of it or anything like that, but like he was a big part of it. And when they got to the finals, like he was valuable guarding Steph Curry in the championship round. Like he's good. So that first and foremost is why he has an appeal. I think there's been some reporting here and there from ESPN and a couple other places, kind of just like very spotty speculative reporting. Like the Blazers Rob Williams is drawing interest. Yeah, no, you don't say. I mean, like if you're a regular listener to this program, you know that we've been speculating since basically the moment Rob Williams arrived that he would have trade value, and certainly all of this offseason and in this season, it's like if Rob plays, he will have trade value because he can help. And he's a role player. He's not someone who you have to carve out shots for and all these things. Like he's a fittable, useful piece on a cheap contract for this year and next year. It's not an expiring deal. You get to trade for a little bit of Rob Williams at not much money, but not a month or whatever. Not like February into the playoff. You could conceivably get 2 playoff runs out of him, obviously with the health caveats always baked into his situation. The reason that he is paid what he's paid, $12.5 million this year, about $13.3 million the following season, is because of his injury history. I think if he had been, he played 6 games for the Blazers last year. If he had been healthy, he might already be on a new team. It's part of the deal with Rob is availability. But he's tradable in a way that the big money, in the way that the new CBA has made those big money contracts challenging to trade. It has also made, in theory, Rob Williams' contract easier to trade. Now, I've mentioned this a couple times when talking about him and Matisse Thybulle. They fit into the mid-level trade exception. The mid-level exception has existed for a long time in the NBA, and it's like a contract you can use if you are, to go over the cap, to sign. It's like basically a contract mechanism you can use to sign players when you otherwise don't have cap space. But now, and if you use it, then you trigger like some cap restrictions. But now, in the new CBA, it can also be used as a standalone trade exception, the same way you would use a normal trade exception. So the mid-level exception, if used in a trade, can allow a team to absorb a 12.8, since like 12.86, but like we'll call it $12.9 million in salary without sending anything back. It can't be aggregated. It can't be used to absorb multiple parts, but it can absorb one player. You can use it to absorb one player making, $12.9 million or less. And Rob Williams and Matisse Thybulle both individually fit into that. Matisse doesn't have a lot of standalone trade value. First of all, he's injured, hasn't played yet this year, and he's just like not as has not proven to be as impactful at the highest levels as Rob has. It's not as good. So every team except for the 4 teams that are in into that second apron, Phoenix, Milwaukee, Boston, Minnesota, all of the other teams, so let's excluding the Blazers, you're talking 25 other teams in the league, could conceivably, and I don't know everyone's exact situation vis-a-vis the hard cap, but like 25 teams, give or take, or I guess could absorb Rob Williams. That includes teams that obviously could use maybe a little more front court help. Could OKC conceivably get something like put a package together that would be valuable? That seems like a reasonable destination for Rob. I think like he'd be great in Phoenix in their quest to collect all former Blazers centers, but they don't have a path to do it. Like literally impossible for them to get that done. Maybe not literally impossible, very unlikely given the logic of salaries and the current rules. But like, New York, the Knicks could conceivably have a need for Rob and could put something together, I believe, based on their current situation. So what is like a reasonable asking price for Rob Williams? He is imminently tradable because of his talent. He is imminently tradable because of his salary. And there's also a mechanism available to a whole bunch of teams where they can just take in Rob without having to send money back. So you don't have to make money work, and the Blazers don't maybe have to take on a player they don't want. And they could just say, hey, we'll take some draft capital and call it good, or we'll take another player and absorb them, through, the trades are simultaneous trades, but they're the way teams like execute them is a little bit different. If you really want, I'm trying to stay out of the weeds here to make this digestible, but what is a reasonable expectation for Rob? I think it's a protected first. Like I don't think you're getting like an unprotected pick for Rob Williams. It just doesn't. It doesn't read like the way trades have gone down in recent years in the league. And I'm not reporting this as speculation. I know folks love sources, so just pretend that I'm saying sources. Logic. Sources told me logic. Following the league with some proximity. So I think you're talking about a protected pick. The level of protections maybe could be up for debate. Is it top 8 protected, top 10? Is it, top 8 protected from a really good team? They don't think they're going to be in the top 8, whatever. Top lottery protected, top 20 protected from like a mediocre team. They say, okay, well, we're a little worried. We don't want to give away the 14th pick or whatever, the 15th pick in the draft if we just barely make the playoffs. You're talking about a protected pick. Coming back is most likely. Maybe a young player, but probably not both an interesting young prospect and a nice, interesting first round pick as well. You're probably choosing do you want a young player that maybe has some upside? Okay, you make the deal, and because of Rob's contract, maybe the money is easier to get done, and which opens up the sort of the path. More trade partners would be available for Rob, which allows for a little bit stronger negotiations. Or you're picking prospect or pick. I don't think you're picking both with Rob Williams. Just realistically speaking, maybe you get like a flyer type, like the sort of the Cam Reddishes of the world, a guy who's is like, hey, this once a highly touted young player has not really clicked. Do you want to take a flyer? Kevin Knox type. Do you want to take a flyer? But I don't think you're getting like an intriguing young prospect and a pick. I think you're choosing them. And the choosing is what I want to talk about in the second segment. The Blazers have kind of chosen one way typically. And one of the questions I recently got about Rob Williams indicated as such that the Blazers' MO has been in this direction. And it kind of points to Rob. Well, let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there. First, though, let's talk Game Time. It's the place to buy tickets, whatever tickets you want to go see, sporting events, concerts, comedy, live theater. You're going to find ways to save money because Game Time is built to save you money. They got a whole bunch of features that are designed to help you save money. They've got curated deals to make it easier to find the best prices on great seats. They've got all-in pricing, so I like to toggle this feature. So when I am scanning the app, pull up the app, search for what I want to go see. The venue pulls up right there on my phone, and then when I am scanning the venue for deals all around where I might want to sit, the total upfront cost is right there once you toggle in all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redemption code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. So I mentioned that I've gotten a bunch of emails about this. In fact, I've done a mailbag question in the same vein as this for Rob Williams. It's like part of the thing that the Blazers have to weigh in deciding whether to keep or trade Rob Williams is what the value is on the market. Like, do they value a draft pick, say like a top 16 protected 2026 pick from the Thunder? Or do they value what Rob brings on the court, or do they value a youngster, which would be, involved in some other deal, like a young veteran? And Tyler R., listener to the program, emailed me at lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com and said, isn't Cronin looking for experienced young players on good contracts? And isn't that Rob Williams? And basically, like, if the thing the Blazers would be hunting for is already Rob, why go hunting? why head out there if you've already got it? And I think it's sort of the obvious, right? Is that the Blazers are still a ways away from being competitive. Rob Williams is helpful on a competitive team. He's helpful on any team that's playing a basketball game, but he's a winner type of, he's a go win type of player. He's not super old, 27. Obviously, like there's some the health concerns make you think like penciling in Rob Williams for the next 7 seasons until he's 34 or whatever. It's like that's probably more hopeful than would be realistic, just because like he's dealt with injuries. It's a real part of his challenge. You want to get sort of the most out of him when you can, as opposed to thinking like you have this longer timeline. It's like, it sucks. People like, it's when any player's body breaks down, it's a crappy part of the game. So like the balance the Blazers are trying to strike is whether Rob has more utility to them as a basketball player who plays basketball games for their team, or as a trade chip. And I think that's, to me, it's fairly easy. I do not see Rob Williams being part of this roster when they're good again. And it's probably because I view this current team as like a fairly far away and needing like a longer timeline. Maybe some of you who are more optimistic, and certainly you're welcome to be more optimistic than me. Like that's probably healthy. Can say like, I actually think they're pretty close. If Rob has this year, next year, you extend him for 2 years beyond that. If you have 3 more seasons beyond this one of Rob Williams, he will be on the next good Blazer team, right? And I think that's like a fair opinion to hold, right? And I think the other side of it is like the cold-blooded asset management thing would say, if Rob Williams is healthy, you trade him and you get maximum value for him. And I do think that is sort of where I land here, right? I do think that is where my pragmatic brain is leading me in this moment. But there's also just like a raw fandom part of this. Rob Williams is a cool dude. I like Rob. I like watching him play. I've liked the little bit that I've got to chat with him in sort of the media transactional experiences. I don't know him well. I'm not around the team enough to have like a strong relationship with him, but I've enjoyed my interactions with him. Like I just straight up like him as a person. I will root for him. I liked him before he was a Blazer. I've liked him as a Blazer, and I'll root for him when he's not a Blazer any longer. And if you are watching this team and having a dude who seems like a cool personality and a good basketball player is someone that you want to keep on your team, that is a very normal fandom thing to care, like to root for. So the sort of the balance here is like, and then the personal preference, it's like, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to feel about this. Our opinions don't matter too much, unfortunately. It doesn't matter what a well-intentioned someone who wants to keep their beloved players on the team and some sort of cold-hearted, stupid podcaster believe. Both of us do not have a say in what happens. But I think what Tyler points out in his email, Tyler's email, is important. The Blazers haven't really prioritized either expiring money or draft hauls in recent trades. You look at what they did in the Damian Lillard trade. They very specifically did not go for just glut of draft picks. And they very specifically did not trade for players with big expiring money that made them this like giant cap space team with a whole bunch to work with. Rob Williams still under contract. Malcolm Brogdon still under contract, obviously with another team, but like would have still been under contract. DA is under contract for this season and next. It's like they prioritized youngish players, depending on your opinion of how old Malcolm Brogdon is, youngish players, and they'll call them young veterans on contracts with multiple years that are either in theory able to play for your team for several seasons, or you have space to trade them without them like immediately running up against it and being expiring contracts the following year. The Blazers have not prioritized cap space. They have not necessarily prioritized hauls of draft picks. In fact, the draft picks they did acquire in the back half of that Damian Lillard trade when they flipped Drew Holiday, they've traded 2 of them, sort of, depending on how you want to count it. 1 of them, and then like I think the acquisition of another pick from the Celtics made them comfortable trading one of their 2029 picks. So like they've even sent out first round picks in order to acquire a young veteran in Denny Avdia. So I will say this: when you are thinking about it, and when you are at your, you're at your computer, or you're on your phone or whatever, and you are using one of the various trade machines on the internet, and you are cooking up a heater, you are cooking up the spiciest, most perfect Rob trade. Just remember, like, for realism purposes, like, your preference in trade machine should guide you, dear listener. But like, for realism purposes, the Blazers haven't necessarily prioritized just give me a draft pick, just give me expiring money. Whether they will in the future remains to be seen, but I think it's important to know what they have actually pursued in trades, and that might inform you how they actually go about negotiating for Rob Williams. I think whereas the bigger money vets on this team are more challenging to trade, and I think Matisse Thybulle's trademark is probably pretty cold, Rob seems to be, if healthy, pretty tradable. I think Jeremy Grant's pretty tradable. I just think the length of his contract will somewhat narrow his market. But like, Rob is imminently tradable if he's healthy in place, because he's good and because of all the mechanisms that I previously mentioned. Speaking of tradable, speaking of what the Blazers have prioritized in trades and how they've gone about doing their business, The Athletic released a list of top 10 teams, top 10 front offices, in the NBA, and a whole bunch of teams got votes, and the Blazers weren't one of them. Let's talk about rankings, what they mean, and what perception says about this franchise from the outside. Join me in that third segment. First, though, let us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Right now, you can tackle all of your gridiron action because new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you're sitting on the couch, you're feeling froggy, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You can be an up-to-the-second wagerer. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I guess it's ranking season. The Athletic released a list today. They surveyed 40 executives across the NBA. 40 executives, asking them to rank your top 5 teams, your top 5 front offices in the league, and it seems like also give them rank and give some written responses as well based on the way the article is written. And 21 teams received at least a single vote. Blazers weren't one of them, suggesting that they are considered in the bottom third of the league by their peers. That's not really what it means, because you aren't ranking the top 20 and then excluding the Blazers. So plenty of their peers could think the Blazers are 6th, but they didn't they were in the top 5. But no one across the league, I think this is a more accurate way to say it, no one across the league believes Portland is currently has a top 5 front office, and that includes, among the 21 teams receiving at least one vote, that includes Utah, one of the tank teams, but I think Ainge and Cachet, but I think importantly Washington and Mike Winger in Washington, he might go by Michael Winger in Washington, receive votes. Two of the bottom feeder type teams. The Spurs received some votes. They're not a bottom feeder team. I think their perception was they were going to be. They've been a little bit better than that. But Archie Buford legacy, Danny Ainge legacy votes and stuff like that. I do not give you this list because I'm actually, if you're a longtime listener, you know this. I don't really do lists and rankings. That stuff is for me to yell about. That's why people do it. Here's why The Athletic does it, right? So I talk about it here. So you share it on social media and we get mad. Either we get happy because the team that we like is at the top, or we get mad because the team we don't like is at the bottom. And then you go and interact with that content and you share it and all of those things. And I'm not just calling out The Athletic. Rankings on the internet is a tale as old as time. Listicles, baby. Listicles. That's from the listicle craze started like 15 years ago. The list thing is a time-tested internet trope. So like if you're a long-term listener, shout out to my everydayers yet again, like that when all those services do player rankings over the summer, I don't share player rankings. Who cares? Is not the content for me, and it's also like it's just designed for rage interaction or sort of like gloating interaction, right? It's like it's just engagement farming. I know what I do here. I want you to engage with the program. Go comment on the YouTube channel. But like I'm an aggregator who needs engagement to survive. Like I'm not. Shoot. I'm part of the machine. Hopefully a part you like, but I'm a part of the machine nonetheless. But I say this to say is like, I think the outward perception of the Blazers is relatively low right now. It's relatively low. And I will say that I'm not going to recap it here, but I listened to the Hollinger Duncan podcast, which is on Dunked on Prime. It's behind a paywall on Nate Duncan's. He puts out like 6 podcasts a week that are over an hour long. It's a ton of content, and you can pay for it if you want. So I'm not going to recap it because like, don't knock the hustle. I'm not going to knock the hustle, right? Like I am an aggregator, and if there was news, but I'm not going to like aggregate opinions from other people. But Nate Duncan is like, an analytically focused person. Hollinger worked in the front office. John Hollinger worked in the front office with the Grizzlies for close to a decade, and is a very analytically driven person. They're both kind of like in the sort of the numbers, more towards the numbers world of things. They certainly watch a ton of basketball. I have sat next to John Hollinger on press row where he is watching a game on his computer during every second that the live action is not playing in the on the court in front of him. Pretty incredible dedicated to the craft. You're watching the end of Hornets Magic just as the Blazers are about to tip off, so you can get it all. Other people do that, but Hollinger's certainly one of the most noteworthy of cramming it in there. I would say throw Zach Lowe on the list of like always watching another game on League Pass on press row when you see him. In any case, Hollinger and Duncan have the Blazers in the bottom 2 in their rankings. Their rankings are organizational rankings, and they include ownership, and certainly the Blazers like de facto temporary ownership situation is not good. Like the fact that like the people who own the team have to sell at one point is like in the future, but we don't know how far in the future. That's not exactly like the stability you want in ownership. So certainly that's part of it. But they were critical of Blazer front office moves as well. So I don't mean I'm not going to like deeply push back against this. Do I think the Blazers have one of the 5 best front offices in the league? No, I don't. No. But like, I don't know where I probably don't have even a good enough grasp to say where they rank. What I mean to say here is that the perception outside of our market, of Portland here, and if you're listening, the perception outside of like Blazer fandom, maybe the Blazer bubble is a good way to say that, is probably lower than maybe you hold this team in regard. Or if you're a hater, you're right, baby. Like, everyone agrees with you. If you hate long enough, you'll find people who agree. That's the trick of being a hater. Just wait. Hate and wait. That's the trick. But I think what's curious about these things is they're very short term. I think some of the reasons the Blazers probably don't rank well is because Scoot Henderson has struggled, because Shaedon Sharpe hasn't taken that step, right? That is like he's more like theoretical than actual like production on the court, and the record has not been very good, right? And so it's like you don't take heed of them because their youngsters haven't popped and they've lost a lot of games. So like, but it only takes like one trade and one dude. It's like if Shaedon Sharpe has a monster January, February, March, like then all of a sudden the Blazers front office is good again, right? Like I think that's it. But so like to close here, in the light of the Rob discussion, how they get from where they are to where they want to go will define them. These lists won't define them. Hollinger and Duncan won't define them. Their peers, 40 executives from who voted on The Athletic, they won't define what the Blazers are. Even a ranking system period like how you rank vis-a-vis the perception of Sam Presti, who's done a very good job, but has, his team hasn't won at a high level yet. They might win at a high level here in a few months, and so that'll really change things. But like, perception changes so quickly. So if you look at like how they deal with Rob, like a trade on the margins, and how they deal with the big money trades, DeAndre and Ant and Jeremy, like how they navigate from here, as trade season really gets going in January to where they are next fall. That's the judge of them. That's the ranking. That's what this is, right? Like, you set yourself up, you take steps, you lay a foundation. Other folks don't see the foundation, or they don't trust the foundation you've built. Then you make moves in the middle, and all of a sudden, the recipe that you cooked up comes out on the other side, and people taste it, and they say, "Damn, that's good. That's delicious." I was going to use a bad word. Shout out to Action Bronson. So I will say like two things. One, the perception of the Blazers is maybe that their front office is not one of the good ones in the league. And also, what an opportunity ahead of them to prove all of this listicle stuff wrong. That is going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow. You may recall that I said I might have an interview in today's show, and we didn't because it fell through. It doesn't sound like it's going to happen tomorrow, but it might. It might. I'm working on it. It's a busy time of year for folks. I will do my damnedest to get it done, but if not, we'll still have a show 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.